You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast.
Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of Armchair Cricket Podcast, a podcast focusing on Test cricket by armchair critics of the game. In today's episode, we have a detailed chat about what racism means to cricketers and how it has taken root in cricket in general with a recurring guest host, Alok Prasannakumar. So we had a very detailed chat and we decided to break up the episode into two parts. So in this episode, you will get the part where we have a detailed chat with Alok about racism, and we chat about all the other concurrent cricketing topics in the next episode. When I start the chat with Alok, I'm throwing him the question over. So let's go over there and listen to it.
You are a lawyer by profession, we realize, and you work with NGOs, and you're probably in a very good position to, discuss this specific topic with us. So we would like to have a chat about racism in cricket.
Yeah.
So there are multiple ways in which racism shows itself, but would you like to start off by, what your thoughts are about it? Then we can go into it in a bit more detail.
Yeah, let's start with the fact that cricket, has a very complicated relationship with the British Empire. The fact that it is not some game which was peacefully spread, but the fact that it was, in fact, it followed a violent takeover of a lot of countries and a lot of places by the British. And let's also keep in mind that in our own country, we've had the race problem. There was Gymkhana exclusively for the use of the Europeans, which prompted the Parsis to set up their own Gymkhana, then the Hindus, and then the Muslims to set up their own Gymkhana.
Mm-hmm.
And till the 1940s, and until Mahatma Gandhi famously intervened, we had a pentangular where the teams were drawn up on racial and religious lines. So let's keep that in mind, that it's not as if racism is something that cricket has never had to grapple with. And I've not even gotten to the apartheid issue. There is one very interesting aspect of the apartheid issue which I have to point out. If you recall, when South Africa was banned from playing international cricket, a lot of teams sent quote unquote rebel tours. These were teams from West Indies, Sri Lanka, uh, England, and I think one team from Australia, if I'm not mistaken. But the consequences of this rebel tour was different for a lot of different players. The West Indians got completely shunned from their societies. There have been some very excellent pieces in cricket for other places. There is an upcoming book called The Unforgiven, which talks about what happened to the cricketers. Everybody from Collis King to Franklin Stephenson to David Murray, and that West Indies team, which was almost like a B team, I think was better than almost every other test team of its time, except maybe Australia and England to some extent. They were good enough to play like that, but their careers were destroyed. Almost none of them played again for West Indies or even first class cricket. Lawrence Rowe, for that matter. So they suffered that consequence. But the English team, which had people like Boycott, like Gatting, they had a 3-year ban, but they went back to the regular routine as if nothing major happened. And not most of them haven't shown any remorse for the fact that they went and played not one but at least two rebel tours to South Africa. So these are some of the complex and tricky issues that cricket has thrown up when it comes to this. But I think more specifically, the issue that we are grappling with right now is the fact that players on the field have been subject to racial abuse, racial taunts by other players and also by the crowd. If you this is not a very recent phenomenon; it has been happening for a long time. And I think what is distressing is that it has continued for such a long time. Those of us who have watched games featuring West Indies from Indian crowds have seen this. We have seen it on TV and we have seen it even when we're sitting in the stands. There is a concerted effort to use someone's race to depict them as being less than human in some way. And I think this is what, cricket hasn't, we've had bans for certain players, and, all the messages are sent out and all the right noises are made. But I want to ask not ask you, but I want to ask a very wider question thrown open to everyone. Has like cricket really grappled with this issue of race? Has cricket really come forward and said, yes, there is a problem in our game where it may be equality on the field, but is it necessarily equality off the field when it comes to such issues. Speaking of on the field, also, I was just mentioning while we were getting ready for the podcast, I had written this piece for Cricket for 2017, where I had looked at penalties imposed by match referees on players. And there are a few incidents which cropped up. I looked at every single instance of a penalty imposed under the ICC code by match referees. And to me, there were troublingly at least three or four instances where, in an altercation between a white player and a non white player, the non white player has been penalized much more than the white player. Now, it's not possible to say that this is a consistent pattern because the instances are very few, there are not too many. But there have been instances where identical acts have led to dramatically different consequences. And inevitably, but here's a tricky thing. It's not as if all the match referees who imposed this penalty were also white players, former white cricketers. There have also been Indian cricketers and there have also been West Indian cricketers. So the question comes into the picture, like, is it that there is some expectation in cricket that white players are supposed to behave like this and they will get away with it if they behave somewhat differently, but non-white players are supposed to behave in a very different way, and if they don't do it, they will be penalized very heavily. Now, this issue comes up every time there is quote unquote monketing which takes place. There is I honestly never understand what is everybody getting outraged about. And almost inevitably, the issue falls along almost racial. I mean, not to say that there are no exceptions. There are, of course, people in white majority countries like England and Australia who say, oh, monketing is not a big deal. But the overwhelming opinion, right, in India, for instance, or in for other countries, is that in India and other non-white countries is what's the big deal about marketing? It's in the rules. It's how it is in the rules. But there is a right way to play the game. And that, to use a quote from Chris Rock in the context of baseball, seems to be the white way of playing the game. And that's a problem. That's a problem that cricket has to really
Right.
ask itself. Is our code of laws, like cricket's code of laws is not supposed to take your background, your race, or even your gender into account. We have the code of laws apply to women, people of all ages. Whoever plays cricket is supposed to be governed by the same code of laws. But the spirit of cricket that we're talking about is the spirit of cricket saying that there is one right way of playing cricket, and that's the white way of playing cricket. That's the question that we have to ask, and that's a complicated question. It's not a very simple question of saying it's racist or not racist. You have to understand that this history that cricket has, the way it spread with empire, the way it was used by certain elites in the empire to spread ideas of colonialism and so on. All of that are written into the game. So when we talk about cricket, let us not forget the race element of it. Let us not forget the complicated history that cricket has had with empire and so on. So that's sort of the point that I wanted to make.
You've made quite a lot of important points, I would say. See, it's more like, I think if I were to start off from where you started, apartheid, so it took those quote unquote countries from the Western Hemisphere, the white countries, to actually get involved, and that's when South Africa really faced a ban, right? I think there were
Yeah.
many countries who were already opposing what was happening in South Africa, but until the big wigs got involved, it was always
Mm.
it was always implicitly believed cricket, Australia and England cricket ran the world cricket, right? Up until 1990 even.
I just wanted to tell this story. I recently read about this, and it's one of my favorite stories to talk about in the context of apartheid. Bob Hawke, who later became the Prime Minister of Australia, was one of the people who was very fervently anti-apartheid. He was a labor activist and involved with the Australian Labor Party, and he insisted that Australia should stop cricketing relations with South Africa. Don Bradman, who was obviously one of the most influential voice in Australian cricket, said, no, why should we bring politics into cricket? Why should we bring politics into cricket? And this went on for a while. Then Bob Hawke said, I'm coming to meet Don Bradman one day. He goes to meet Don Bradman. And they know this is going to be the topic of discussion. Before Don Bradman can open his mouth, Bob Hawke says, Don, I completely agree with you. There is no place for politics in cricket. But this is a country whose laws say that a
Right.
non-white man cannot play on the same field as a white man. Now you tell me who has brought in politics into cricket. So Don Bradman is like, Oh yeah, you're right. Don, Bob, I don't have an answer for that, and I think you're right. And just through this power of persuasion, Bob Hawke changed Don Bradman's mind. He just presented the issue in a completely different light, and and using Don Bradman's own language and his own terms. And Bradman agreed. You're right. They have brought politics into cricket.
When it comes to apartheid, and whole generations of cricketers were lost because, as you say, they couldn't play cricket on the same field as white folks, right? And they had to have their own clubs, their own grounds. I think if you read recently the article from Ian Chappell that's doing rounds on Cricinfo, like it's a fantastic article where he himself says where they used to, on their free days go actually look at these other clubs and other grounds where quote unquote colored players were playing, and they actually saw a slightly higher level of cricket sometimes there, right? This is one of the things. And also
Yeah,
the implicit nature of Australian cricket and England cricket having a veto in all ICC decisions up until 1990, right? So how he brought it up, he was never an
yeah,
establishment man, so he was probably the right man to shine a light on these things, because what you already said, he was the one who was leading Australian sides, let's say, talks when the World Series cricket happened, and the person on the other side was a certain Sir Don Bradman. It's very well known, right? How much of an establishment man, or how much of the establishment, so to say,
absolutely.
the Don was, and how much of anti-establishment Mr. Ian Chappell was. So that's
Yeah,
again a very nice story there. But as you say, if you again, during the times of apartheid, what happened with Basil D'Oliveira, how England actually nearly pulled out of a tour because they wouldn't be allowed to tour with Basil D'Oliveira, and then how the establishment caved in and they chose to keep him out of that tour. If you can go through those stories as well, it's terrible. So it took a lot for cricket to wake up. So
yeah.
if you treat the coming of apartheid as the first coming, or the first instance of cricket sort of waking up to the racism in its own ranks, probably now we are beginning the second one. This is more of a, let's say, one that's influenced by everything that's going on in the world, right? And what happened in America
Yeah.
to a certain very unfortunate person. But at the end of the day, this is still a good thing for us. For example, people like Darren Sammy speaking out, how they have faced racism not only from co-players, or also from within establishments, how
Mhm.
women's cricketers have come out and spoken, how they have been treated as second-class citizens, and so on and so on. But I always wanted to ask you, or somebody who works with human rights, a question like this. Darren Sammy said 6 years ago, it came to his notice that they used to call him a certain word that means, let's say, colored person in Hindi. And he somehow never chose to raise a voice. It took a documentary or mockumentary by Hassan Minhaj, where he heard it and he actually understood the
Mhm.
context. Do you think it is that simple, or is it something that is suddenly sort of, it's a time to make use of this opportunity to shine light on something that's indeed a problem in cricket, no doubt about it? But is it just also a certain amount of opportunism thrown in there along?
So recently, I was part of a quiz where somebody reminded me of. I had read this long ago, but now that you mention it, it's good to be reminded of it again. When the Pentangular tournament, which we just discussed, the Hindu team, used to have two tents set up for them. One for all the upper caste players, and one for Balu Palwankar, who was the only Dalit player in the team.
I remember, yeah, I know the name.
And Balu Palwankar was, again, one of the greatest cricketers that India has produced. As a spinner, he was beyond compare. He's traveled with the Indian team. His brothers also played for the team. And over time, when his brothers were part of the team, the segregation continued. So let us accept that it's not just racism, but there's a certain level of casteism also, which had to be dealt with in the early years of
Mm.
cricket in India. And talking about it openly, and Balu Palwankar himself became a leading light in the politics of the day. He brought the issue out into the open, and that ensured eventually. That's discussed in Mr. Ramchandra Guha's book Beyond the Boundary.
Indeed.
Some people should read it. But I think for a lot of people, they didn't see it as this was the way everything has been done in this country. Who are you to question it? A lot of people's initial response was that. They just couldn't accept the idea that caste is not normal, right? For people, this idea that you have to segregate people from the same caste, cannot share the same utensils and water and food, was so ingrained into them that they never thought twice to question it. I think what the present stage has done has asked us to question some of the things that we took for granted, right? It's asked us to examine what is this motivation behind calling someone a name on the basis of the color of their skin. Is it entirely harmless? Is there some deeper understanding of it? And to me, I guess more than making it one of civil rights, right? That's the next level. You can go to a different level. You could say that Darren Sammy is one of the best paid sports persons in the world. What's his problem in life? But there is an element of how do you treat others with dignity and equality. And we are talking about young men and women who are setting an example for millions of young men and women around the country, not just in India, but around the world. People see what a Virat Kohli or a Mithali Raj does, and they want to be like that. I don't just mean on the cricket field. They set standards for behavior that go beyond the boundary. That when we talk about Tendulkar and we talk about Dravid, we are not just separating their personas into their cricket persona and their outside the field persona. They may be very different outside the field and they have cricket, but they have to project a certain kind of persona. And this is where we have to ask ourselves, what is it that is being projected by these by say the teammates of Darren Sammy, who maybe referred to him by the color of his skin? Is that all they see of Darren Sammy? Is that the first thing that occurs to them when they see Darren Sammy? It may be that they have been taught to believe that this is how you should see the world, but maybe it's a good opportunity to make them question some of these things. And I think there's a great opportunity for something like the IPL, and not just the IPL, all these international tournaments where you are exposed to people from different cultures, regions, backgrounds, races, languages, whatever it is, to understand the richness of human experience and diversity. Everybody talks about how the IPL is great for, you learn from the best in the world, you learn from top athletes, but you also learn from different cultures. You also learn the history, the background, the diversity of the human experience around the world. And I think SRH shouldn't be defensive about this. Don't say that, no, 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 this was only meant harmlessly, this was only meant harmlessly. It's an opportunity to say, good point raised. If you feel that this hurt your dignity as an individual, that this made you feel less as of a person than you did, maybe it's time to have that conversation. Maybe it's a time to bring together people on this team and say, why do you think you use this? Why do you think that Darren feels this way? Why do you think that you felt that this was just harmless, but in fact it feels this way? So in a sense, this is an opportunity to bring about a kind of common understanding of how we should learn to treat each other. So I think I think this is a great opportunity. We are throwing open a set of issues that we thought, it's okay, it's just between boys or it happens in the locker room. But now that it has come out in the open, I think it's a great way to address it front up. And as happened with caste in cricket, it'd be ridiculous now if anybody says that what is this player's caste, what is that player's caste, and try to give them separate facilities. Of course not. Maybe the progress lies in opening up these questions and trying to find answers that bring us to a mutual understanding.
Indeed, it's come out into the open. It's a good thing. Can we build on top of it? One thing, there is this sense of reparations. When it comes to reparations,
Hmm.
there is always the argument from the other side. We were only going by the social norms of those days. It has been often mentioned in the bigger context for sure that
Hmm.
whenever there was racism involved, it was more like it was a normal thing to happen. So it has to be unfortunately
Hmm.
treated in that context. But just saying I did not know any better is unfortunately not a response, isn't it? Or is not a good enough reason, isn't it?
It's not a good enough reason, right? Because now that you know, how do you make it better? That's the question. It's not just, oh, now you know, let's go back to doing the things we usually always do. The question always has to be that now that you know something that you didn't know, or now that you have understood something in a way that you didn't understand before, how do you make it better? I think that is where the conversation has to move forward. That is where you have to, at least when I say you, I mean the context of the cricket boards, and I mean in the context of players. How do you make cricket a truly inclusive game? How do you make cricket a game which truly reflects the diversity of human experience around the world, where everybody is treated with equality and dignity no matter which part of the world you go to? I think that is really the task before administrators, players, teams, and all of that. And it's about finding ways to do that. So that is really what I think we should focus the discussion on.
Going forward, it is also an interesting thing for me to see how the authorities tackle this, right? I'm sure, to take away from this, there is this second coming or second awakening, so to say, and people are going to be ever more aware of, these very sensitive topics that plague our game. But what are the authorities doing about it, right? So at what level do you start educating the cricketers? Do you start at the lowest level possible, where people are shown through example that everybody is same and it doesn't matter what color skin you have. It's more, it's, you will be basically classified based on your ability, not on the color of your skin, right?
Correct. I think it has to start from there. That's right. And just sorry, just to interrupt you, I think it's incumbent upon the cricket boards, right? Not just the BCCI alone, everywhere around the world, that when you're getting young people into the system, this is a great opportunity. When kids come in into the system at the age of 13, 14, 15, you have the chance to shape them and mold them and make them better citizens for not just their country but around the world. And you can use, and that's the one of the great things about sport. If sport genuinely helps build character, as we are told, around the world in a lot of sports, it's a great opportunity to build the character of these young people who come into the system, to make them truly believe in the ideals of equality and dignity and diversity. And that's incumbent on the boards to take this opportunity.
Indeed, just to present another face on this, they do face a challenge because even if they have idealistic outlook on how they want to inculcate this sort of equality, maybe the kid, whoever is playing cricket and has seen equality in a certain way, has to go back home and then face a different reality there. Because my point is, unless society itself starts to think about these things seriously, and the kid who's heard a lesson about equality at cricket clinic or in the cricket ground goes home and then sees a slightly different picture either on TV or from one of his parents or from one of his grandparents, I don't know what would such a kid do. What, whom would such a kid have to follow? That is my sort of a point. So
Yeah, no, no, I understand, and I completely agree. It can't be that you have to change society as this result. I think that's too much of a task for sport to do. Sport, I don't think, can change a society by itself. It can play a very important role, but it can't change society by itself. But what it can offer is this set of counter arguments. It can offer this counter example. If you can show that it's possible to have this equality on the field, and if you have seen Fire in Babylon, or if you have seen the Empire of Cricket documentary series, you find a lot of West Indian players talking about how this equality on the field of cricket in West Indies, not talking about in England, in West Indian culture and politics and society, how it had a huge impact. That even though they were equal on the field, they were not equal off the field. And that made them think, that made them activists, that made them challenge the systems and the norms and all the various things about the society itself. Um, and I think, and I suppose Vivian Richards is the most vocal and most strongest, staunchest advocates of this. Let's not forget that even Vivian Richards just talks about this. Even when he was playing county cricket in the 70s in the UK, he couldn't find accommodation to live in a lot of cities because the owners would very clearly say no Irishmen or black people allowed,
hmm hmm yeah.
right? So in a sense, yes, of course, Vivian Richards is showing on the field how he's equal to anybody anywhere, but is facing this inequality outside, and that allows you to challenge, that allows you to build your fortitude to say, if I can be equal on the field of cricket, or if in cricket I am taught to treat people with equality, dignity, and respect diversity, maybe I can do that outside cricket also. So it is not to say that cricket is the sole influence in your life, but cricket gives you an opportunity to get a counter view, to build your own, inner defenses, so to speak, or build your own inner abilities to be a better person than what the society expects of you.
That's also a valid argument, I suppose. Indeed, cricket can definitely play its part in how well society eventually, opens out and embraces these issues. Because, I was also talking to you about this off air, right? So, how Muhammad Ali in a Parkinson interview, he brought up very poignant points and they were able to laugh it off as if it were comedy, but every one of his points were hitting home right there. Because he asks, why were they no, if you look at the final supper, why were there no dark skinned people on the table, etc., and so on. And what about the angels? Why are they always white? What about the dark skinned angels? Are they in the kitchen preparing, honey and whatever for these other angels and so on? So
Yeah.
it's a longer discussion, and it's indeed a very, this is the breaking open point. So I'm really hoping this is a good point where cricket can reflect on itself and then move further as to how, there can be more inclusivity. It is not, in my opinion, is it's not going to happen overnight, even in a generation,
No, of
right?
course.
So
Yeah.
maybe time to sort of reflect on it and see how best it can be taken forward. So in a slightly smaller society, I saw that at least in a society like Netherlands, racial equality is promoted from a very young age, and there is a certain effect to it. And that was, let's say, my way of thinking, that it can probably also brought into cricket. It can also be brought into cricket, right? So, all right, that those were some very good points you made, Alok. But as you're a lawyer, would you like a finishing statement?
No, I mean nothing more. And I think that to just to reiterate what I said, I think cricket should take this opportunity. Cricket should take this opportunity. Cricket, when I say cricket, I mean its administrators, its players, its fans, its long history, and people who care about cricket should really use this as an opportunity to examine some of their more deeply held beliefs, some of their deeply held notions of what is right and wrong, and ask themselves the tough questions. And I think this is what this situation is asking of a lot of people. And I think cricket shouldn't be any exception. And I'm glad that Darren Sammy has brought out the issue. And it's an issue in Indian society. Why do we make such a big deal of skin color? Like just today, for instance, the famous Fair and Lovely brand has said that it will drop the fair part of its Fair and Lovely because it was actually promoting, a certain kind of skin-based discrimination. Not discrimination, but let's say, but skin-based preference or skin-based whatever, which saw that dark skin was inferior in some way.
Mm.
So this deeply held notion in our society. Maybe racism is the wrong term for it, but whatever it is, it's colorism or skin colorism or whatever you want to call it. It is something to be deeply re-examined, and I think this is what this episode has asked us to think of. At least Aaron Sami bringing it out into the public has brought us to think about, and I hope that we take this opportunity to really rethink some of our notions and understand issues better and take it forward.
Hope you had as much fun listening to this chat as we had recording it. We will add the next part of our chat with Alok in the upcoming episode. So we hope to have your company for the next and all the other upcoming episodes of Armchair Cricket Podcast. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast.